He owned the land. It was his family's legacy, passed down, protected, and cherished. But one day, without warning, strangers moved in. Bulldozers roared, foundations cracked into the soil, and soon 35 gleaming homes stood where his childhood memories once lived. They told him it wasn't his anymore. They laughed, dismissed, and tried to erase him. But what they didn't know, what no one expected, was that the very land they stole held a secret. And when he revealed it, their dream neighborhood turned into a nightmare. The question is, how far would you go when everything is taken from you? For generations, the land had been more than property. It was identity. Acres of rolling fields, tall trees swaying with the wind, and a quiet river cutting through the soil like a lifeline. It wasn't just dirt and water. It was the story of a black family who fought through hardship, rebuilt after loss, and held tight to the one thing no one could ever take, their home. Or at least, that's what they thought. At first, the signs were subtle. Surveyors walking the edge of the property line, clipboards in hand, avoiding eye contact. Then came letters with fine print, cold words stamped in ink, declaring the land was no longer his. And when he pushed back, insisting on the truth, the pressure only grew. Meetings with officials led nowhere. Neighbors whispered. Developers circled like vultures. And then it happened. Heavy machines rolled in at dawn, tearing into the earth, leveling history. 35 homes rose from the ground like monuments to arrogance. His name, his deeds, his family story. It was erased as if it never existed. But what the developers didn't realize was that beneath their shiny homes and manicured lawns lay something they had overlooked, something he had always known, a key to justice they never saw coming. Because this man wasn't about to let history repeat itself. And soon, the balance of power was going to shift dramatically. The construction didn't just scar the land, it scarred him. Every day he watched concrete foundations pour where his grandfather once planted crops. Families moved in, smiling as they unlocked doors built on stolen ground. Children played in yards that once belonged to his bloodline. The pain cut deeper than words, but beneath it burned a steady fire, determination. He began to dig, not into the soil, but into the truth. Records, deeds, old maps faded with time. Each page told a story of ownership, a paper trail that showed his family's claim was never broken. But when he brought it forward, the officials dismissed him. The Homeowners Association shrugged him off, calling him bitter, saying he should move on. But he couldn't move on. Not when he noticed something strange about the land they had seized. A detail the developers overlooked in their rush to profit. The entire neighborhood, every last home, sat on ground sustained by one fragile structure. The dam. A dam that his family had built, maintained, and legally still controlled. Suddenly, the power shifted. What the HOA thought was theirs was, in truth, balanced on his permission. They had stolen his soil, but ignored the water that fed it. And he knew it. The injustice only grew heavier. The HOA began fining him for trespassing on what used to be his land. They painted him as a troublemaker, a threat to their peaceful community. Police cruisers lingered near his driveway. Letters piled up demanding he stay away. But every insult, every attempt to erase him, only fueled his resolve. He spent long nights walking along the dam, listening to the rush of water pressing against its walls. He thought of his ancestors who had worked that very land, who had bled to keep it alive. He thought of the smug meetings where his pleas were laughed away. And he thought of the families now sleeping comfortably in homes built on lies. They thought they had silenced him, but what they didn't understand was that their entire empire stood on borrowed time. And soon, the water would speak louder than any letter, louder than any law. The night was eerily quiet. The moonlight reflected off the surface of the lake, calm and unbothered, as if mocking the storm brewing inside him. For weeks, he had endured humiliation, threats, and the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. But tonight, standing before the dam, he realized he held the power to decide how this story would end. The homes loomed in the distance, their windows glowing warmly, families asleep, and stolen comfort. He thought of the board meetings where his words had been dismissed like dust. He thought of the fines, the patrol cars, the laughter at his pain. And he thought of the one truth the HOA had overlooked. Without the dam, there was no neighborhood. The air was thick with silence as he placed his hands on the iron wheel controlling the floodgates. His pulse thundered in his ears. He hesitated, not out of fear, but out of the enormity of what he was about to unleash. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about dignity, about justice, about showing them that stolen ground has a way of taking itself back. With one slow, deliberate motion, the wheel began to turn. Metal groaned, water surged, and the pressure of decades roared to life. The calm lake transformed into a raging force, spilling into the valley below. Within minutes, the manicured lawns and neatly paved streets were drowning. Driveways disappeared under churning water. Porches cracked as the current claimed them. The neighborhood, so proudly built on injustice, was now powerless against the flood. From his vantage point, he watched not with glee, but with a grim finality. This was never what he wanted, but it was what they had forced. The dam had spoken. The land had remembered. And the families who ignored his cries now understood the cost of building comfort on someone else's suffering. The question wasn't whether the homes would survive. It was whether the truth would finally be seen. By morning, the headlines told a story the HOA could no longer control. Images of shattered homes, broken streets, and drowned property spread across news stations and social media. But behind the chaos, there was a deeper truth. A truth they had tried to bury beneath contracts and concrete. The land had never been theirs. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. Watching families salvage what they could, he felt a heavy mix of justice and sorrow. This was not about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about forcing recognition. For years, he had been invisible, dismissed, and stripped of what was rightfully his. But now the world was watching, and in that spotlight, the injustice could no longer be ignored. Neighbors whispered his name with fear, others with respect. Reporters dug into records, uncovering how the land had been taken, how voices had been silenced. The HOA, once untouchable, now faced lawsuits and investigations. Their power had cracked as swiftly as the dam gates had opened. And yet, for him, the true victory wasn't in the water or the ruin it caused. It was in the silence that followed, in the undeniable proof that one man's stand could shake an entire system. His message was clear. Dignity is not negotiable, and justice has a way of finding its path, no matter how long it takes. So when we ask, what would you do if your home, your legacy, your very identity was stolen? The answer is never simple, but his story reminds us that when the weight of injustice grows heavy enough, even a single voice can unleash a flood no wall can hold back. And if stories like this matter to you, don't just watch. Speak up, share, subscribe, because the fight for justice is far from over, and every voice, including yours, has power.